It's time for Blue and White Breakdown on ESPN Radio 103.7 and 1450. Sponsored by Joel Confer Toyota and Joel Confer BMW. This is the place to be for news and analysis around Penn State football, basketball, and all 29 other sports. Call the show at 814-272-9625. That's 814-272-9625. Now, here's your hosts of Blue and White Breakdown, Matt Bortner and Zach Seyko.
Would you like to form a union?
Wow. That's a hard-hitting question right away.
It's time to unionize the workers. Workers rise up. Well, that's at least the message that was supposedly coming out of Sean Clifford, Penn State football's camp, and everything else. There was a story that was released over the weekend that said that, Penn State football was at the forefront of trying to get the Big Ten players to unionize, and, well, they retracted that statement.
Yeah.
It's pretty bold, and some people can sue you for that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
To make those claims.
It is, I will say it is a union-like activity.
It is. It's fair enough.
But out it is, you better have your facts right when you're saying somebody's trying to form a union.
Facts.
Yeah. What do facts mean these days?
The media industry. Come on. But we will talk about that a little more today. What Sean Clifford and Kevin Moore, commissioner of the Big Ten, we're talking about what they're trying to accomplish, or at least just, again, what was actually said rather than speculation and what they may have said. We're also going to talk about Penn State football, previewing the pass catchers, the wide receivers and tight ends, in addition to other Penn State sports. We are very close to some of the first games. I would say less than, 30 days for some of the Penn State varsity sports. So something to get into there as the season, not only for Penn State football, but some of the other fall sports are getting ready to open up here just past mid-August. And Penn State football recruiting news, and of course, across the conference segment to finish things up. Matt, how can people connect with you on social media?
At M_Bortner.
All right, I am
on Twitter. That's on Twitter.
I am also on the Twitter at Zach_Seyko, and you can follow all of our socials for ESPN Radio: Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, State Colleges, ESPN Radio. Real simple. We post all the shows, all the interviews on our YouTube page. So if you miss a portion of it, you want to share it with somebody who didn't get the chance to listen, you just want to hear it back again after we just heard it live because you like us that much, State Colleges, ESPN Radio on YouTube. You can also give us a call live into the show, 272-9625, 272-9625. We have the flasher, so we will immediately...
Whoa. I'm not the flasher.
It's the phone flasher.
Okay.
It's the phone that lights up.
I was going to say, I'm not in the state to be flashing anybody right now.
I didn't ask you to. It lights up when somebody gives us a call. So 272-9625. That's 272-9625. Put the 814 in front of it. You give us a call, and you can get live right on the show with us. Let's start with Penn State men's basketball. So I laid the rundown out. It's mostly about Penn State football and talking about other Penn State sports like baseball, field hockey, soccer, etc. But Penn State men's basketball had its media day last week. I got to go to a portion of it. I saw the Seth Lundy, Jalen Pickett conversation, the presser, caught the tail end of the Micah Shrewsbury presser. Yourself, Adam, and Jamal, who's actually made a guest appearance on the show. Both Adam and Jamal have had the chance to co-host. And we, our ESPN radio crew was there, but you got to see the bit of the practice and the entirety of the coach and player pressers. What was your first takeaway? First, let's talk about your takeaways from the pressers themselves.
Well, from the press conference, I think there was a very obvious tone from Micah Shrewsbury in terms of first, sort of thankful how the first year went, but making sure that people understand the goal is to be a tournament caliber team, a Big Ten competing team every year. And that last year, while they played teams very tough, no moral victories, that sort of thing. But not only that, I think the tone for this year is Micah Shrewsbury knows, and I think we all know him coming in here with his offensive pedigree from coaching in the NBA and coaching at Purdue, is that he knows they have to score the basketball to win games. Now, I think people were a little surprised last year at how intense and how important defense was for Micah Shrewsbury. But then again, all successful coaches, defense is the staple to keeping yourself in games, especially when things aren't going the way you want. But the obvious thing was to take the program to the next step. They're going to have to up the tempo, and they're recruiting players and bringing in players to fit that mold, and they're going to have to score more points. And the thing that really stuck out in that overarching theme is he said they haven't really even practiced defense yet this year. That over the summer they've focused fully on offense. He said right now we stink as a team defensively. Actually, I think he said suck as a team defensively.
Totally radio appropriate.
But that's because they haven't focused on it yet, and he still said that that's going to be the staple of his team, but they got to be able to score the basketball.
Yeah, and they have good defensive players that will be able to help around that, at least to make up for what they're not practicing. But yes, the story needs to turn around to offense, because we can't have another 33-point first half again between Penn State and Wisconsin. Yeah. I mean, that is your classic Big Ten Saturday game, but come on. It's what they wanted to do all along. It's just you can only work so much with the pieces you have. You can't force a program or on your personnel if they don't fit it. If your guys are all shooters and not guys who are good in the paint, you're going to spread the ball around the arc. You're not going to, okay, well, we got to go inside. We got to post up, and we got to. No, Micah Shrewsbury's doing the right thing. He's tailoring his game plan to the guys that he has now.
The best coaches develop, or they adapt. They don't try to force players into a scheme. What they do best is adapting with the players that they have, and then making the adjustments from there.
Well, we were all trying to figure out what the team's actually going to look like. I mean, Jalen Pickett's going to be the star of the team. That's moving forward.
Yeah, and I honestly think Seth Lundy fits into that role too, as star, because we've seen the flashes of his scoring. They want him to be more consistent that way, but I think he's a star in terms of he should have been first team all defensive last year in the Big Ten. Yeah. So I think he's on that same level as stardom as Jalen Pickett. Pickett just gets more of the recognition because of how he scores the basketball, but those two are your staples on your team.
With this new offensive focus, are they going to miss Sam Sessoms?
I think they have guys that can do that for them this year. He's a nice spark off the bench, but I think he was way too inconsistent to be like, we completely miss this guy, because there were nights where he wasn't scoring the basketball, or I think where it really hurt him was turning over the basketball for Penn State last year.
So where will they turn to past Jalen Pickett and Seth Lundy? Jamal, Adam, you, me, we're all trying to figure out a rotation for this Penn State men's basketball team. And at some point in the season, Micah Shrewsbury is going to have it narrowed down to about 7 or 8 guys that he's going. I think he's going to go 7. But there's a lot of guys. But that's the thing.
I think
if he goes upwards of 8, 9, I think 10's pushing it. That's just not the case in college men's basketball. You will not have 10 players see the court consistently. Maybe early on in some of the non-conference games, they're going to get guys in, but Jalen Pickett, Seth Lundy, who are just the next options, names we need to know.
I don't know. I think you could see around in the 9 and 10s just because of they're lacking in the forward department in terms of height. So I think
the front court is pretty limited.
If you get into foul trouble and I think just playing all out on trying to defend some of the big men in the Big Ten, that you could see it around 9 or 10, but most teams preferably go through a 8 or 9 man rotation at most. But I don't know. I think because of how young they are and how many moving parts, I mean, you'll get more of a sense at the end of the year. But even so, I think it's a lineup with as enough talent, especially with young guys, that, you know, it could be a nightly basis that you have a different rotation, especially with the freshmen.
He's Matt Bortner. I'm Zach Seyko. It's Blue and White Breakdown on ESPN Radio, our show devoted to Penn State sports. You saw the practice with Adam and Jamal. I had to cut out a little bit early because we have Black and Gold Breakdown on Tuesdays, our sister programming here to Blue and White. So you got to see a sliver of it. These guys see it every day, so they'll make the ultimate evaluation. But who were guys that actually stood out to you, and for better or for worse, who stood out in that practice?
You know, I don't think there was anything, and it's hard to tell from just one practice because maybe a guy's having a better day than he's had all
so who had a good
season,
performance at that practice?
I don't think anybody really had a bad performance, but in terms of not based off of how good they were in that practice, but you can get a feel if a guy's ready to play or not at that level right away. And from the freshmen, to me, Jameel Brown and Kebenai are in legitimate conversation of starting on day one. But I mean, it's
making the starting 5 as true freshmen. I like it.
But it
feels weird. At Penn State, it feels very weird.
But at the forward position, it's not a really surprising statement because the only pieces you have coming back as a forward are Caleb Dorsey, who saw limited playing time for Penn State last year, Michael Henn, who is now with his fourth program in 6 years. So you're sort of slim pickings there. I mean, Seth Lundy's going to be asked to guard some of the big men this year. So Nye put on about 20 pounds since he entered the campus. So he's got a chance to not only play right away, but I think start. And Jameel Brown, I don't think that's one that'll most likely be off the bench because they're more deep at the guard position. But as the year goes on, I mean, explosive first step. He can shoot the basketball offensively. He just looks like he has all the skills. Those two guys can play right away. Cameron Winter and Andrew Funk are great additions. Cam Winter is just a guy that can play basketball. Andrew Funk gives them a option from downtown. So those were the guys in terms of additions that I was really impressed by seeing them out on the court.
Yeah, they are really deep in the backcourt because, I mean, they brought in Cam Winter, they brought in Andrew Funk, Bucknell, Drexel, respectively.
Kanye Clary he'll get his shot. His issue right now is his size. So,
he's a little smaller. Yep.
But he is lightning fast. So yeah, the options are sort of endless at the guard position.
A starting 5 that looks. So who would your starting 5 tomorrow be, or at least what you're expecting?
Well,
I think
Seth Lundy and Jalen Pickett are they're going to start.
They're staples of the lineup. I think Kevin Nye gets in there.
Yeah, I think he starts day one as well.
You have to because you have. I mean, you brought in another freshman, okay, and the exact same Demetrius Lilly is same thing.
And he's more of a project, but he looked to me like he has enough skill. I think he's going to have to work on getting into his body a bit more.
He's listed at 260.
But he's going to see time this year. I really think down the road he can become a very good player. He's got some moves down in the post, and he is a load to handle. But yeah, I think Nye is probably going to start it as well.
I mean, Kevin Nye, according to 24/7, is the best recruit in this class.
Yep.
Jameel Brown second. Now, how do we know that based on the four-star rating? They gave Nye a 94 out of 100. They gave Jameel a 93. So, yeah, we're splitting hairs here. But
again, I think what is to be stressed the most, though, going into this year is, first off, the team on day one is going to look nothing like the team at the end of the year. And you say that a lot with every team because you're supposed to improve by year's end. But I just think because there's so many new pieces, they're going to be trying to, find the best combinations all year round. If a guy starts maturing mid-season, one of these younger guys. So I think that'll be interesting. And also the other thing to stress is, okay, maybe I don't know if they have a precipitous leap. I think they can be a little better than last year is probably what I would predict. But they're going to be a really fun basketball team to watch.
yes, and I think that's the most important part of all of this. I don't need NCAA championships as a Penn State fan to speak on behalf as one, but something that's just like, okay, I want to go to the Bryce Jordan Center to see this team. And I think that's what they bring this year.
Yeah. Also, I guess I didn't finish my starting five. I think Cam Winter starts.
Okay.
And then I don't know. They're probably, I don't know. They might go 4 guards to begin the season.
That's what I'm looking at and thinking.
So I think Dalian Johnson would be one of those guys that can start. He looked really good shooting the ball and handling the ball, getting to the rim more. That's what he needed to work on. And then I don't know. I think either Caleb Dorsey or Jameel Brown are also the other guys that you could possibly look at starting.
I will go Jalen Pickett and Seth Lundy.
And I guess Dredd you could throw in there because
Miles Dredd if he's ready.
Which they think he should. Shrewsbury said it was a significant injury and a significant surgery. He said he should be ready, but he's a guy that they've also asked to guard some guys down low as well.
Yeah, that I'm seeing him as the 4 right now. I will go Andrew Funk.
Yeah,
in there. So your 1, 2, 3 are going to be Jalen Pickett, Seth Lundy, Andrew Funk, in some sort of combination. Miles Dredd is your quote-unquote 4, and then Kevin Nye is your 5.
To be honest, though, I don't think when you're looking, even in that game 1, the starting lineup doesn't really matter to me because I think there's going to be a lot of guys getting equal playing time.
But it's the most fun.
Yeah.
That's what the show's for. It's Blue and White Breakdown on State College's ESPN Radio. When we return, we have our Player of the Game nomination. That's right. Yes, we do. Over the summer, we got one. Play of the Game is on the way later. Next, we are talking about Penn State football, the wide receivers and the tight ends, pass catchers, and our question, which is up on Twitter. So we're taking your votes. Who will lead this year's team in receiving yards? It's up on the State College's ESPN Radio Twitter, and you can call into the show. We'll be back in just a second here on ESPN Radio.
Welcome back to Blue and White Breakdown on ESPN Radio 103.7 and 1450. Time for the guys to nominate the Player of the Game.
It's a Penn State alum.
Yeah, the U.S. soccer team, that's a machine that just keeps on going. They're quite the program, especially I know men's soccer in America is nothing like the rest of the country. They
qualified this time. I think they qualified for the 2024 Olympics.
But the U.S. women's soccer is everything. That program is everything you aspire to be as a country and in how they play. So, yeah, Alyssa Nair stopped all 5 of Canada's shots on goal in USA's 1-0 victory over Canada to win the CONCACAF championship. The CONCACAF championship, which gave USA a berth into the 2024 Paris Summer Olympics. They had already qualified for the 2023 World Cup. PSU alum Sam Coffey was also on the team but did not play in the final.
And yes, we have a hard confirmation on the fact that the United States men's soccer team does qualify for the first Olympics since 2008. So, but yes, the women's team is much better.
Yeah, that's
in terms of
saying it nicely.
In terms of the way they perform against comparable competition and dominate on the world stage, men got to catch up. It's Blue and White Breakdown on State College's ESPN Radio 103.7 and 1450. He's Matt Bortner. I'm Zach Seyko. We are sponsored by Joel Comfort Toyota and BMW and Joel Comfort Quality Pre-Owned in Pleasant Gap. You can come see the Joel Comfort Quality Pre-Owned difference for yourself. Joel Comfort Quality Pre-Owned, 475 East College Avenue in Pleasant Gap, or you can visit them 24/7 online at joelcomfortqualitypreowned.com. We talked about Penn State men's basketball with Media Day last week to open the show. Now we are back to Penn State football, and our play of the game will circle around that. It's another throwback play when that comes up in our next segment. Pass catchers, wide receiver, tight end preview. There is a lot of depth at tight end. I think there's a lot of potential at wide receiver. I have my question marks as far as who will be the 1, the 2, the 3 in terms of target share. You have the X, the Z, and the slot receiver. And then to understand Penn State's wide receiver depth chart, it's not a 1 through 7 or 1 through 8, if you will.
Yeah.
It is X, Z, slot. And then there's a 1, 2, 3 depth chart at those positions. So if Parker Washington were to come off the field as let's say the X, whoever the backup X is goes into the game, not necessarily the 4th best receiver, quote unquote. But this is a room that I really like. Sean Clifford has plenty of chemistry for them. I saw someone ranked him as one of the top Heisman candidate today, and said because he's a dark horse. He's having a lot of fun, and it's second year getting some consistency. So I like that reasoning there.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's better than what he gets credit for especially when he's healthy, but I'm not ready to take that leap.
No. I think he has the best season of his. I feel like everyone said that, but we'll save that for a quarterback preview. But he has a lot of good targets to throw to this year, despite losing Jahan Dotson, who was taken 16th by the Washington Commanders in the draft. Parker Washington's that natural. I mean, what can you say about him? Already has 100 career receptions. He started as a freshman. He started as a sophomore. He's now a true junior. And his hands, I think, are obviously not better than Jahan Dotson's, but in a number 1 receiver, that's exactly the kind of skill set you want when catching the football in Parker Washington. So it's really, the debate's up for who's going to be number 2.
Well, I think yes, he's a slot receiver, and when there's more than one wide receiver out on the field, that's going to be his position. But typically there will be 3. He is athletic enough and can go up and get the ball too.
Hey, he's not that big.
In a one receive, but he gets up well enough.
Oh, he plays bigger than his size. Yeah, absolutely.
And his hands are so good. He gets good enough separation that if there's a one receiver set, you still feel comfortable with him out here. And he, in terms of his ability, I mean, we've seen tremendous amount of production out of him just being the number 2 receiver. I think he has a chance to have Jahan Dotson type numbers, which is now that's a lot to live up to, because seeing Jahan Dotson set or be near the top of single game, single season, career records at Penn State. But I think, and my bold prediction at a position this year is, and not because he would be the number 1 target, but more of what's afforded to him. I think Mitchell Tinsley has a chance to outgain Parker Washington in yards this year, just because of the attention Washington brings, and I think just all around it's a better receiving core for Penn State this year. I think it is, if I'm going to rank their best positions on offense, I'm going to say the receiving core is where they are number 1 in terms of depth. So I think there is a lot to really like out of Penn State's options to catch the football this year.
Yeah, Mitchell Tinsley impressed at Western Kentucky, and that's exactly why they asked him to transfer in, or why they recruited him anyway, because they lost Jahan Dotson. They lost that X receiver, and you are basically, they're just receivers. They can just move wherever on the field. That is not the case in this point. That's just not the case. You need to have a guy who understands all the route combinations, all the route concepts. Yeah. So Parker Washington to slide over, because he is the slot. You pointed that out. And I also said that in this offense, you have an X and a Z and a slot. Parker Washington's the slot. They don't have that X because Jahan Dotson moves on to the NFL. Mitchell Tinsley is now that guy. So you bring up a good point. In terms of volume, Tinsley might actually see the most targets because the way that X position is set up, he's running two routes, okay, in his head when he gets the play call. He and Sean Clifford have to be on the exact same page. And Tinsley's going to see one thing, and Sean Clifford basically has to read Tinsley's mind as far as what route he's. That is a very difficult position to play, that X wide receiver, because you're the option receiver. So Tinsley, a senior transfer that's coming in, he's a veteran. He's obviously done it at Western Kentucky. He's doing it now at a bigger program and a better team. I'm still going to buy in the fact of Parker Washington. Yeah. I will go with the obvious option here just because you have a little more balanced. It's not so much Jahan Dotson. But I wouldn't be surprised if the difference is like 50 yards. Yeah. It's going to be a very close race between Tinsley and Washington in terms of receiving yards.
Yeah, I honestly think those two they're both make themselves put on the especially in the Big Ten, some of the best duos in the Big Ten and maybe in the country as well.
I think Parker will have more receptions just because out of the slot, they're going to send him in motion a little bit more. You'll have the bubble screens that they used a lot instead of a run game when they set up on 1st and 10. So Washington at the end of the day will have more catches. Who are some of the other guys that we need to watch? Because Keandre Lambert-Smith, I'm kind of waiting for him to have that breakout. Yeah. Does Malik Mega push Keandre Lambert-Smith for that Z wide receiver spot? And then what about Caden Saunders? I hear good things about Harrison Wallace III, Amari Evans, Liam Clifford, the younger brother of Sean's in this. He's just on the depth chart. Jaden Dotton's on the depth chart as well. So past those guys, I want to say Malik Mega and Keandre Lambert-Smith. That's the biggest debate at who is that Z, that quote-unquote third target.
Yeah, I think those two are the front runners for that. Lambert-Smith, if he can, I think it's more mental than anything. He's got the capability of catching passes, and you see what he can do after the catch. But he's got to be consistent in catching balls. He's got to be consistent in running the right routes and being where you need him to be. That, in terms of consistency for wide receiver, is because when things go wrong, the ball gets turned over to the other team. That's why consistency matters so much at the wide receiver position. That's why they asked
Tinsley to transfer in, because you couldn't slide Lambert-Smith over to the X. He wasn't ready.
So I think that's a big fight there. Just all the depth pieces you see, I think Caden Saunders will probably be a guy that gets his red shirt burned this year because he's just so talented.
Yeah, he's really good.
I'm not sure what the snap count's going to look like. Omari Evans, maybe see him in 3 or 4, but
he's a speedy guy.
But I think he probably ends up being redshirted after it's all said and done. I don't know. I just think they have so many depth options that, especially early on in the season, you're going to see a lot of guys get a lot of play and a lot of chances.
Let's go to tight end. They're in the pass catchers, but they're honestly very crucial in the way the run game develops. So hopefully that second year under Mike Yurcich actually benefits them a lot, because 9 times out of 10, honestly, when I'm looking back at some game recaps, some film, the tight ends are missing the seal block to prevent the backside defender from getting the tackles, from making the play on the running back.
And that's, they're all capable of it, because we've seen clips of them crushing people, and we've seen, it's, again, the consistency factor. We've seen both ends of the spectrum from all 3 of those tight ends.
And I want any of them to start. I want them to go 2 tight end, 3 tight end. If they really need to go power, you can bring them in at any point in time. I think it'd be a lot of fun to see at the goal line with Tyler Warren on the line of scrimmage, not in the backfield. As cool, as fun as it is, it feels so gimmicky to me unless it works. And it didn't work all the time.
Yeah, well, I would say at a less... The rate of that usage needs to be lower. I'm fine with seeing it a couple times, but when that turned into being one of your better options at the goal
9
line,
overtimes.
in the red zone, that's when you're having issues.
Theo Johnson is supposed to be your big name tight end. He was a 96 out of 100 when he was recruited from Canada. Tyler Warren has made huge strides. I honestly think he's the best blocker of this group, and it kind of leaves Brenton Strange, who's the assumed starter, right? But I feel like Theo Johnson and Tyler Warren are going to take plays away from him because of how good they are.
I think Brenton Strange has the most to prove individually. Like that job is there to be taken. They need consistent, and that's the word, consistency.
He's the one that from time to time I saw him missing blocks the most. Because Theo Johnson lined out wide from most of the time because he's your best pass catcher is Theo Johnson.
But honestly, so running the football is the obvious place where Penn State needs to get better to take their offense to the next level. But in terms of unlocking the full package to the offense, it's getting guys, not necessarily the tight ends involved, it's up the middle of the field. The last couple of years, finding targets in the middle of the field has really what Penn State has lacked in the offense. I mean, you could sit Pat Freiermuth in the center there, and he'll just eat a defense alive. And that makes a huge difference in unlocking the passing game. And I think it has to be a step that Penn State needs to take this year.
This really should have been our question of the day here because I think this is up for debate. Who leads the tight ends in receiving or at the end of the season, plays or snaps or catches, whatever? Who's going to be the leading tight end?
I still sort of think that it's a by committee thing, and it doesn't have to be a bad thing. If all of them elevate their game, they each bring a different asset to the team. I think Brenton Strange more your physical guy, Theo Johnson a big playmaker, Tyler Warren sort of your do-it-all guy. But I think the most upside in receiving is Theo Johnson, no doubt.
Yeah, he is. They stuck him in the slot. They brought him on as a true receiver. I want to see him in the red zone a little more for jump balls. I think one-on-one against a small corner, you mean to tell me that that's not going to... They never did that last year.
Yeah, and I think a guy you looked at was it first name... I'm blanking right now. The brother of Christian Kuntz. Was it Tyler Kuntz? I think he was a guy that they sort of had a plan like Theo Johnson in which they thought they could have spread him out wide, be a goal line target, and that just really never developed for him. Wherever he transferred, I actually think he had a pretty good year last year. But Theo Johnson, he sort of got also like the Mike Gesicki traits, like go up and get the ball. We need... And they struggled in the in the red zone.
Warren has the same capability too. But either of them, I think if you isolate them on an island, they had Rob Gronkowski in the NFL doing that.
Yeah.
He just tortured safeties and corners because they couldn't body him.
I mean, a mismatched tight end it's a game changer in the game of football because it just becomes a matchup nightmare. Do you put a linebacker on him? Do you put a corner on him? So, that... Again, I think that position is so important for Penn State to improve in the offense this year.
Coming up next, Penn State football and Sean Clifford's decision to unionize. No. The discussions that he had with Big Ten Commissioner...
Have somebody drive off the road.
The conversations he had with Big Ten Commissioner Kevin Warren, plus we will talk about the news surrounding some of the other varsity sports here in Happy Valley on the campus of Penn State. It's Blue and White Breakdown on State College's ESPN Radio.
It's time for the play of the game on Blue and White Breakdown.
Long and deep far side, reaches out and juggles, got it, touchdown, Penn State!
It is 1st and 10, the ball resting at the 13-yard line. The pitch goes back to Derek Williams, turns the corner at the 5, touchdown, Penn Penn State. Here comes pressure. Smith is hit and sacked. The ball is loose, and it's recovered by Ohio State. Tambahali with the hit. Celebration is beginning down on the field. What a scene.
People want to know if Penn State is back. What would you say?
Oh, I don't know whether we ever left.
Circa 2005.
Maybe I'm a bit, sentimental on it because it was, as being a young kid, maybe it's higher up in my lore of my own mind, but I still say it's the loudest I've ever heard Beaver Stadium was that game. And to me, it was the greatest football game at Beaver Stadium in terms of my favorite memories that I've ever seen.
I think the equivalent for me I don't think I was at that game. I would have been about 10.
Yeah.
Maybe 9. I think I was 9. And I would say that Penn State beating Ohio State with the Grant Haley scoop and score, the Marcus Allen block kick, does the same thing for me. I don't know. It just felt like everything got silent because it was so loud.
Yeah. Especially after the Holly sack. This was like the first year they started using Zombie Nation. I thought because I was sitting in the upper deck, I thought the whole upper deck was going down because you could just feel it swaying, bouncing up and down. It was just an unreal moment, and that will forever be one of my favorite Penn State teams because they were counted out as they said Joe Paterno's time to go, and man, I love Michael Robinson, Paul Pusluzny. That was a darn good football team.
11-1. And they beat Florida State in triple overtime in the Orange Bowl, 25-22.
Yeah, that game didn't end till like 1:30 in the morning.
That was the first game I ever stayed up late for and watched. My parents fell asleep. I stayed up and watched the whole darn thing and barely remember any of it.
Yeah, I was actually at that game, too.
Oh, good. It's Blue and White Breakdown on State College's ESPN Radio, sponsored by Joel Comfort Toyota and BMW and Joel Comfort Quality Pre-Owned in Pleasant Gap. Shop Joel Comfort Toyota and BMW 24/7 at joelcomfort.com. Let's go, before we get to Sean Clifford, and we've talked about Penn State wide receivers, the pass catchers, tight ends, everything you need. Whoever's catching a football from Sean Clifford this year, we talked about them. We opened up the show with Penn State men's basketball. Now let's get to Penn State baseball, field hockey, and then women's soccer. So Penn State Abington and NCAA Division III Player of the Year Ryan McCarty signed with the Toronto Blue Jays as an undrafted free agent.
Yeah, he was the first Abington player to sign professionally. Listen to this stat line. 529 batting average, a 591 OBP, 91 RBIs, 27 doubles, scored 89 runs, and set the Division III record for most homers in a game with 4. I don't care if you're Division III, Division 17, you put up those numbers. Somebody's going to give you a chance.
You're getting a phone call, it sounds like, and that's exactly what the Blue Jays decided to do. Well, best of luck to he as he goes to our neighbors up north. Field hockey. Penn State Board of Trustees approved a $12.8 million plan to upgrade Penn State field hockey's complex, and I did see just a 3D image
rendering
of what they're going to do. Yeah,
the improvements include home and visiting team dressing areas, locker room space for officials, a ticket office. This is a big one here. Note the public restrooms and concession areas. Before it was just Porter Johns there at the field hockey complex, and just one of those shacks for the concession stands, press and media boxes, and a television broadcast booth. Maybe we could take advantage of that and include 1,200 bench seats. So it is a facility that definitely needs the upgrade. So excited for Shar Charmeret to get that all approved.
Yeah, and that team's been very competitive.
Yes.
At or in around the top 10 as of late. So accommodate the team, accommodate the fans who want to see a good team. And they'll be back in action in the fall before you know it. Penn State women's soccer alumna Carrie Abello was selected as the Big Ten Conference's nominee for the NCAA Woman of the Year Award. That was announced today, actually. The NCAA Woman of the Year Award honors senior student athletes who have distinguished themselves throughout their careers in the areas of academic achievement, athletics excellence, service, and leadership. And Abello was one of 577 women nominated by their school for the national award.
Very well deserved.
Yes. Blue and White Breakdown on ESPN Radio every Monday from 5 to 6. He's Matt Bortner. I'm Zach Seyko. We're taking you all the way up till 6 o'clock. And now we finally get to Sean Clifford. And it was a big nothing. When the report came out and I said, wow, well, I am not surprised because
I wouldn't say it's a big nothing.
I mean, it's a big something, but the way that it ballooned into, because you had to pull back a retraction and everybody, I said, when I saw the headline, I was like, well, I'm not surprised. This is the guy that jumped on the opportunity to start, and I'm commending him for it. He jumped at the opportunity to start his own agency to represent college football players and college athletes. Why not go a step further and use that agency to get medical coverage, rights, whatever have you? At the end of the day, this is how it's been quoted to me. Sean Clifford is trying to get the college athletes' representation, a seat at the table when it comes to these kinds of things. What exactly does that mean, Matt?
So I don't know where you differentiate from saying a seat at the table is in terms of if you're being involved in negotiations with how things are going, or I don't know. I think there's a lot of wordplay that's going on here that is important. So is he just going to sit down with Kevin Warren and issue his concerns and say, this is where things are heading, what's going to happen in the future? Or is it sort of a list of demands and saying, hey, this is where we want this to head? That we have no idea exactly what those conversations are being like. The other thing, though, that is important to note is that they didn't rule out the possibility of eventually trying to unionize. And if I'm not, and I'm nowhere near anywhere of an expert on any of this, but I think where that takes a next step is I think you have to be considered a professional. You're then considering it to be professional sports if you're or a professional athlete if you're unionizing to become a player and saying that we need all of these perks or whatever, or cuts of a contract in those terms. So, but again, I think that's a road we're really heading down, of all likelihood that's what a lot of people are going to be pushing for in terms of especially men's basketball and men's football.
The College Football Players Association, and Jason Stahl represents the organization, is the one who started this, and then Sean Clifford became a part of the conversation to help with Penn State, because he's not concerned about I mean, he would be given the circumstances, but closer to home, he wants to help Penn State and ultimately the Big Ten. Let's give this, for example. Journey Brown doesn't have any protections after football. One day he was expected to go in the NFL, maybe drafted, I don't know about a first round, but maybe definitely top 3 rounds, and get compensated for his talents. But then because of a health condition, was unable to make that dream a reality. And that's the example that people have been saying, well, Journey Brown didn't have those protections. Here is the list of the quote unquote, as you said, demands that the College Football Players Association was looking at. The demand of Kevin Warren and the Big Ten was independent medical care enforced by a CFBPA representative, post-football health protections, and a percentage of the media rights revenue for the players.
That's
all right.
That...
You got me. They're unionizing. Like that is a big deal. That last part, okay. Let's look at medical care and some other things post-football, but yeah, we want a percentage of all the sponsorships that you get.
Well, that's. My point is, if that becomes a case, I don't know how you're not considered professional athletes at that point. If you're taking a cut of it's not like, okay, this is what I bring to the table for somebody for a business or whatnot. If you're receiving a direct cut percentage-wise based on what this entity is bringing in, I don't know how that can't be considered being a professional athlete. And then that opens up a world of, I don't know what the question of college athletics in its entirety looks like. Does football and basketball become separate entities? I don't know.
Semi-pro or college football, and then you trademark it. College, honestly, men's basketball, trademark it, and then that's it. You're essentially getting a pseudo NFL and a pseudo college men's basketball NBA league in this case, because now, and we might need another whole show to do this because there are so many ramifications that can come from that. That media rights revenue funds all 31 Penn State sports.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that they're wrong in saying that they
want a cut of it.
That they want a cut of it.
When's the cut? And how big's too big of a cut? I mean, you kind of right. Look,
but yeah, you're not wrong in saying that. But there's also unintended ramifications, consequences that happen from wanting those sort of aspects.
When is enough enough? At this point, and this isn't about Sean Clifford, and this isn't about the Big Ten or the College Football Players Association. When is enough enough? Because NIL, and we've seen what it's morphed into, players now have the ability to go out and make their own money. But now some of the players, and it's mostly agents and lawyers, because I barely know what they're trying to talk about and all the legalese and everything. But agents and lawyers have gotten together and said, hey, look, you can get this money and it's going to all these other things. But now the players are starting to ask, why aren't we getting that money? Why is it going towards tennis? Why is it going towards field hockey? The $12.8 million project doesn't happen without Penn State football and Penn State men's basketball and a little bit of Penn State men's hockey. That's about it. But this is where the conversation gets tricky because, yes, and the players' argument, agents and lawyers' argument is that, well, if you didn't have these players, you wouldn't have the NCAA. You wouldn't have all this money. Well, where else are you going to go?
Yeah.
Where else are you going to play? Where are you going to play European football? Are you going to play Canadian football as an 18-year-old? Are you going to get a free education? Are you going to get free food, free housing, some of the best resources that nobody else can? You get med techs, you get trainers, you get tutors, you get the facilities, you get nutritionists at a $200,000 to $300,000 value when all said and done. And that's not enough. With NIL, that's not enough. That's a very condensed version of how I want to rant, but that's ultimately the point. You get all of this stuff, and it's like, well, about those media rights.
Yeah. Well, and that's why it's so tricky, is because you're part of a university entity that is providing for others, and that's how originally basketball and football were intended at these levels. And then the fame, the money that's being made off of it came to a meteoric rise. I mean, they're making more than they ever have off of it. So that's where the issue comes. That the intention of just bettering everybody for amateur athletics is, it's almost like it became too big to be a fair instance for everybody.
We can talk about this more even before the Penn State football season starts because we will need content. But yes, when there's a development, even if there isn't, I think there's more to unpack here.
Well, I mean, it's not just because it's going to change the whole landscape. It's not just no, we don't think these players deserve the money. There's consequences because of it. Not saying, again, that they don't deserve it, but it has ramifications for these decisions.
He's Matt Bortner. I'm Zach Seyko. It's Blue and White Breakdown on ESPN Radio. When we return, we'll have our Across the Conference segment to wrap up the show. Stick with us right here.
This is Blue and White Breakdown on ESPN Radio 1037 and 1450. It's now time to look across the conference and see where Penn State stands in the Big Ten. Across the Conference is sponsored by Happy Valley Adventure Bureau. You don't need to leave Happy Valley for a great getaway. Plan your staycation today. Visit the Happy Valley Adventure Bureau for day trip ideas.
Well, we have a projection of where we could expect them in the standings. Cleveland.com put out its annual Big Ten preseason media poll, and Big Ten Media Day is this week as well.
Yep.
Tomorrow and Wednesday. Excited to hear from Brian Tripp, who's actually going out there, and will be on Sports Talk with Steve Jones later in the week to recap it all. But here's what they voted, and Ohio State was the unanimous conference champ.
Fair.
In the East, OSU, Michigan, Penn State, and Michigan State, 1, 2, 3, 4. In the West, Wisconsin, Iowa, Minnesota, Purdue. And I have seen that right now. It is expected that the Big Ten championship will be none other than Wisconsin and the Ohio State Buckeyes.
Well, if you're a betting man, history says that's usually the case. So why not deviate from the formula?
I hope Minnesota shakes things up, because I'm actually a little more bullish on Minnesota this year.
Yeah, well, it also make Penn State's home schedule a lot more exciting and the whiteout a lot more exciting. PJ Fleck is doing a spectacular job at
Under
Minnesota.
the circumstances,
Yeah.
yes. He's made Minnesota very relevant, at least in the Big Ten conversation. I don't entirely know what Wisconsin has. I hate to say it, but Gary Brown, a big part of their staff, he passed away, and then you just lose that, and that's the focal point of Wisconsin's offense is running.
And then Iowa with Spencer Petras,
No, I hope Iowa finishes 0-12. I really do, honestly. I despise them the most out of the Big Ten.
But yeah, that Spencer Petras leaves a lot to be desired at the quarterback position.
Go Hawkeyes. The ACC is standing pat. They had its media day for now amid all the college football realignment.
I think probably not. This is something that we'll see week by week. I think we're going to hear a new story on every conference about how they stand currently.
The big ACC Pac-12 is coming. Be aware.
You can bleed blue and white every Monday at 5 p.m. with Matt and Zach on ESPN Radio 1037 and 1450. Thanks for listening to Blue and White Breakdown, sponsored by Joel Confer Toyota and Joel Confer BMW.